Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Good Deeds Note Investing Podcast. I am your co-host, Chris Seveny, and tonight we have a special guest with us. Gail is unable to join us, but we have Chad Urbshott with us of Equigrowth Properties, and we are continuing our October horror stories, and we wanted to bring Chad on to share one of his CFD horror stories that he has, which again is, listen to our podcast. Gail and I share many of ours, but we like to bring on other investors to get other perspective as well. Before I do introduce Chad, I just did want to say one thing. This last 2 weeks in the note industry, we did lose somebody. For those who knew Claudia Newcomer, who was with Granite and eventually with Revolve Capital, and Chaz Gwynn. She unfortunately passed away 2 weeks ago. So for those, in the note industry, I've given my condolences, but many people may not have heard that. So I just wanted to start by saying that. And with that, I've got, again, Chad Urbshott with Equigrowth. Chad, how are you doing tonight?
I'm great, Chris. Thanks for having me on again.
So good. Yes, Chad is second, third. Now we've had you on multiple times where you just hop on and so forth. So
yeah,
thank you for joining us. But for people who may not have caught some of the prior episodes, why don't you just take a minute to tell people about yourself?
Sure. Thanks. Thanks again. Like I said, this has usually been on your open mic night where I hop on and I take over your show. So tonight I actually get to take the whole show over. So my name's Chad Urbshott. My company's called Equigrowth Capital. Actually, Properties is one of the subsidiaries. So I've been investing in real estate for about a dozen years now. I started, I think it's like 07, buying rental properties, doing lease options. Got into student rental properties, which turned into animal houses. I was a little bit hairy managing like over 20 students. My background is a structural engineer, so I've got a background in construction very similar to Chris. Him and I actually followed a pretty similar path, and I think we're almost the same age, so it's kind of leery almost how him and I, how correlated we are. But I'm Canadian, eh? Although I was Americanized for some time, I had a house down in Florida that I used to go back and forth to, but because of life circumstances, I sold it about a year and a half, well, almost 2 years ago now, I guess. And so I'm back in the freezing white north. So it's starting to become cold again. And I got my first cold of the season as of yesterday, so I'm not too happy about it. But I've done some commercial development as well. And then all along the way, I was buying more and more real estate. And back in 2013, I guess I jumped into it full time. And that's when I started investing down in the US, in Florida, buying foreclosures right off the auction, like the courthouse auctions. That kind of evolved into doing some rentals, turnkey rentals, down in Florida, up in Cleveland. Then I got into fixing and flipping, mostly down in Florida. And while I was doing that and buying them from the foreclosure auctions, I started taking a keen interest in reviewing titles and, just making sure that, what I was buying at the foreclosure auction was indeed a first lien and there wasn't a second lien or an HOA lien and nothing in behind it. So that's kind of how I discovered the note world. At the time, I think it was 2015, I guess, the hedge funds had all moved in and were buying pretty much everything sight unseen and buying them at retail prices. So the more I looked into it, I realized, I was actually working with a firm called RSI Asset Management. A guy named Bill by Mill owns it.
Mm-hmm.
People have heard him before. So I was working with him and his team, and that's kind of how I got introduced to notes, that you could actually buy the note before it got to foreclosure. I'm like, well, how does that work? And started doing some investigation into it. And one thing led to another. I actually partnered up with a guy back in 2015 and did quite a few deals with him, and then struck out on my own in 2017, I guess, middle of 2017, I went cold turkey on everything else real estate related, and just started buying notes and wound everything else down. And so here I am now. It's been a pretty crazy ride so far, and getting crazier.
And also, Chad, I know recently you've been working on potentially taking down a large pool of assets. Is that you're still doing due diligence on that, or how's that?
Yeah. I think that's another reason I got sick. I think probably the stress and been going around the clock lately. Yeah, I'm taking down a pool of myself and another partner taking down a pool of around 70-ish notes, and it closes tomorrow. So yeah, It's been pretty crazy the last couple weeks.
Well, thank you for coming on this evening when you got 70 you're supposed to close on tomorrow. And before we get to horror story, just want to ask one other question for people out there. What is, since you've been in notes, several years now, what has been, you think, one of the things that you thought would be difficult that turned out to be more simplistic, and vice versa? What did you think would be more simplistic and turns out to be more difficult?
Yeah, when I first started, especially when I went out on my own and started buying them for myself. So when I first started, I was using my own capital, and I bought probably a dozen or so right out of the gate. Not all at once, but within like a couple months span. And I was overwhelmed, like beyond belief. I was just like, wow, what have I done? I thought I have to slow down here and figure out what the heck I'm doing and get some systems in place. So I think the hardest thing I thought was just running the day-to-day aspect of it, like from on the asset management side. But once I got systems in place, I sat down for a few months, and I'm a big Podo fan, and got that all set up and running, and got my accounting system all switched over, and I've got them somewhat integrated. Then I wouldn't say I was twiddling my thumbs, but I'm like, oh, okay, this is now a lot easier than I thought. It's just a matter of checking in with the servicer, once a day, and just going through, the notes with them, and or going through the notes and figuring out what needs to be done. And so it went from literally hours and hours and hours a day to probably 1 hour a day. Well, that was at the time when I didn't have that many. It was a little bit more involved than that now, but so that was probably one thing I thought was turned out easier than I thought, I guess. And then one thing went from easy to hard I would say taking back a property as an REO. Even though I've been buying real estate for a dozen years now, these things are definitely not the average property. It's just, this is a good segue into the no horror stories. So
let's go.
Yeah, so that I've got so many horror stories to choose from, but so I'm actually going to present two, and I'll try to go through the first one really quick because I was actually on one of the episodes, so people may hear a bit of a repeat, but it's all done and over with now. So if anybody that did hear this story in the past that might be interested to hear how it ended up. Didn't end up well, but it's out of my hair now, and I'm glad it's gone and over with. And I'm sure I probably will run this again, but this was definitely one of those stories where just like, what else can happen? Like, it's just like anything you could possibly think could go wrong definitely did on this one. So if you can see the screen, Chris, here, I'll enlarge it now. So yeah, the first one's reperforming CFD gone bad. That was in Kansas City. And then the next one is a foreclosure gone awry. And what I mean by that is a foreclosure that is taken way, way longer than it should have. And it's still in the process and not even close to being done yet. So let me get into it. Okay, so this note, or CFD, so it's a bit of a story behind this one. This was one of the very first ones I purchased with a partner back in 2000, I think it was 2016 we bought this. So you'll see I don't know if you can see my cursor or not, but you'll see on the left side there.
Yep, we can see it.
Okay, there's a lot of numbers on here, but I just pulled, this is actually a case study I put together like a couple years ago. So I got a notification at 4 o'clock today that it was on this podcast, and I completely forgot about it. I'm like, oh man, I got to put something in quick here. I grabbed this chart off of the case study, So we bought this in the partnership. So you can see that, at the time we bought it for 14,000.
Mm-hmm.
It was not performing at the time. I think what happened was they actually started paying again, and then they stopped. And I heard it. Oh, I was listening to your podcast this morning, bright and early when I was at the gym, or on my when I was working out, and it was with Bill Griesmer, and he mentioned peak servicing. Well, I'm pretty sure this one was with Peak, and we had no idea for months and months and months that these people would stop paying again. And I think that's what happened now. Is my memory was kind of jogging me. So it was literally like almost like, I'm going to say like 8 to 10 months went by before we really realized what was going on. So we ended up getting them. We scrapped the old land contract and we did up a new one. And I can't remember for the life of me why the legal fees were so high. I just remember there was a lot of back and forth on this land contract. The original person in the house was an elderly lady. She was the only one on it. Then her son came along and he wanted to be added to the land contract. And so there was I can't remember the exact details, but so you can see there, we got a new land contract. There's some of the fees, taxes. So we're all in it for about 19. So I'll get into the story. The 26,000 sale price of the note. When they did the note again, we sold it to them for 40,000 and they put 4,000 down. So
Okay.
then we did 10, 10, 10 basically.
Mm-hmm.
So there was the income, including some of their payments, selling costs. So you can see our profit on this was pretty decent. Like that's a pretty close to a home run.
Yep.
So that circle around the 26,000, I thought, man, this is a really good looking note. Like as a performing note. So I bought it out of the partnership, and so here's the repurchase details, I guess you want to call it.
Yep.
So the value of the property, all day long, this was like, well, I think when we bought it in 2016 it was about 40,000, but this is in so it's called Grandview, Missouri, and I'll get into how much I like the city in a bit here.
It's not a bad looking house. I mean, from the outside, that picture.
Yeah, that was kind of what it looked like. I think when we first bought it, I was looking through all my pictures and I was going really quick, so I don't know. I've got a lot worse ones, but that's kind of how it looked like when I repurchased it. I think I got another drive-by done, and it was a little bit overgrown, but still looked in pretty decent shape. So
when you say repurchase this, you had bought this and basically worked it out, redid the loan, and then you bought it back out of your partnership from your partner. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. So on the left side was in the partnership. Here's all the
Okay.
numbers, and then the repurchase was when I bought it on the partnership. They just wanted to cash out and get their capital back. So if you look at the value is 45 grand, the UPB was 36 roughly, 525 payment, P&I payment, investment to value 58%. If you look at the value of property, purchase to UPB is about 72%, and the yield, just a flat out 12 months times the payment divided by purchase, 24%. Looks like a screaming good deal all day long, right?
Yes, it does.
Yeah. So the reason I did all these numbers, when I was listening to the podcast this morning, when I heard Bill, I'm like, oh man, he's got a whole bunch of details. I better come up with some quick.
Bill is flattered, by the way, that you listened to him. Bill's listening tonight. So.
Oh, is he? Oh, okay. Yeah. No. Great job. And Bill, you're pretty entertaining. So I have to admit, I don't know if I can top that or not. But okay. So that was the deal. So I think somewhere along the lines, it was switched over to another servicer. We switched it to a new servicer before I bought it out of the partnership. And when I bought this, the servicer at the time, or that was holding it at the time, instituted a new, like it was like either you had to have 10 loans or something like that, or it was a minimum monthly charge of like $200 or something. I can't remember what it was. So, and I wanted to keep it there. And I will explain that why in a minute. Just for the sake of keeping not transparency, keeping everything's seamless with the borrower so that, they don't see any hiccups. A bunch of the performing CFDs I bought last few months, I just kept them with the servicer. So
Was it Land Home, by the way?
Yeah, it was Land Home.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I was like, okay, well, I'm not keeping it there. That's their policy, obviously. So I'm pretty sure, I switched over to Madison, and I don't know exactly what happened, but something got lost in translation so Land Home was collecting taxes, escrowing taxes, and they were collecting them. Well, I don't know why, but the escrow they didn't forward to Madison. Something got screwed up there, so they mailed the escrow check to the borrower. Which
I know where this is going.
So we it gets to Madison. Madison boards it. I think their payment was $600, maybe a little bit more than that. Six like small change. So they make 2 more payments, and then by the time Madison gets boarded and everything, and they realize I had realized that they weren't escrowing for taxes. So I said, well, please escrow for taxes on this. Well, since they were missing the previous amount, and there was 2 months had gone by, obviously they had to take those out, basically years worth of taxes and truncate them down to like 8 or 9 months, whatever it was, or maybe even less. So the payment went up $30. Well, this borrower was irate that his payment had gone up that much, and I had tried to tell him, like, listen, you got the escrow check for the taxes from the previous servicer, so you can use those towards taxes. That's why you're anyways, he just wasn't having it. He thought we were trying to rip him off. He even got his attorney involved to review it, and then he said the new land contract was phony, even though we spent $3,000 on it. So yeah, 2 months in, he stops paying, him and his mother. So after that, he just wasn't responding, or he was responding, but he was just like, I'm not paying another dime. I'm only paying the $600 or whatever it was. That's all I'm paying. So at that point, I said, no, don't accept any more payments then. If that's the way he's going to be. So a couple months in after that, this being a contract for deed, and for all the listeners out there, the difference between a contract for deed and a note is, I'm sure most of your listeners probably already know, but just I'll get into it really quickly. A traditional note and mortgage, you have to foreclose on. You got to go through the whole process. This is in Missouri, so it's not judicial, but it's almost as quick as doing a forfeiture on a contract for deed. But on a contract for deed, it's almost like an eviction, where you just it actually has to go through the courts, whereas a foreclosure doesn't in Missouri. But anyway, you just present to the judge that they haven't made their payments. So it's almost like a rental, where they haven't made their payments, then the judge issues a forfeiture judgment, and then you can get your eviction from there. So he wasn't budging, filed for forfeiture, and I've done, I think, a couple now in Missouri, and I've done one foreclosure, and I'm pretty sure the foreclosure was quicker than the forfeiture. So
yeah, my attorney has told me in Missouri you're better off having a note in your land contract. I've heard that. Missouri and Georgia, in those 2 states.
Yeah, the last foreclosure I did, just as well. Well, it was this year. Yeah, I think I bought it January. No answer from the borrower. Issued demand letter. I think we started the foreclosure process in the middle of February, end of February. Foreclosure happened in the middle of June, so it was pretty darn quick. Yeah. So, any event, So by this point, so I bought this. I should back up. I bought this in January of 2018, I believe it was.
Okay.
So at this point, it's probably April, I guess, May, June. It's initiated the forfeiture. We get it. I think it was October. I think it was October. Yes. So get the forfeiture. Obviously, they're still in the house. Send the drive-bys. Oh, and all during this time, I started getting notices from the city about uncut grass, junk in the yard, parked cars parked, like you name it, animals. Must have got 5 or 6 of them. And I'm like, well, I think I called them up and I said, listen, we're trying to get these people out of the property. Can you cut us some slack? And they said, okay, well, we'll give you a bit of slack. But then they kept, sending the notices. We ended up sending a preservation company over. It's one that I used to use that I no longer use.
Out of Missouri?
Yes, you know who they are very well. It literally took them like a month to get over there, or at least 2-3 weeks. I just wanted to like basically do like a door knock, and grass wasn't cut. Let's cut the grass, and like let's get this property taken care of. Well, he was met at the door with the guy wielding a knife, apparently. So
nice.
Yeah. So this is when the fun begins.
Mm-hmm.
So it's so we get the forfeiture, and then we got to proceed with the eviction because they were still in the property. So we get the eviction. Actually, you know what? Sorry, the forfeiture may have happened in August. Yeah, we got the eviction by October, I believe it was. So,
still, I mean, in October, I mean, it's still 10 months. That's still not a lot of time. I mean, it's 10 months is a good amount of time, but it's not forever. It's
no. Well, like I said, I think we started the forfeiture in April or May. So 4 or 5 months have gone by at this point.
Mm-hmm.
So I remember this. I literally had I got an email from the attorney handling they were the same ones that did the forfeiture. The sheriff lockout or whatever it's called is Monday, and this is like a Thursday.
Mm-hmm.
Holy crap! I got to get someone over there so like quickly, because when you do an eviction, you need to have someone to change the locks, and you need to have in this state apparently, or in this county, you need to have a moving crew there.
Mm-hmm.
So the whole weekend, I think it was like a Thursday, I'm pretty sure, and the whole weekend I scrambled. I finally found a property manager, a local one that would go over to the property, and I talked to him on the weekend or over the weekend about it, and he says, "Oh yeah, I've done these lots of times. Like, I handle 80 properties myself." And so, sorry, I thought it was on the Tuesday, or no, it was, I thought it was on the Tuesday. That's right. For some reason, I got my dates mixed up. And it ended up being on the Monday. Well, luckily, this property manager called me up and he said, "Hey, do you mind if I drive by the property today so that I can just get a handle on what's going on?" I'm like, yeah, absolutely, go ahead.
Yeah.
I just said, beware, the borrower's probably still there, so don't go in. He said, okay, no problem. So he goes by there, and the sheriff's lockout was scheduled for 2:00, I remember. Plus it's Central Time. Yeah. And I'm on Eastern Time, so that also mixed me up. And so I get a phone call at I guess it must have been 3:15, and 2:15 Central Time. And he said, "I thought you told me," this is the property manager, "I thought you told me the lockout was tomorrow." I'm like, "Yeah, it is." He said, "The sheriff's here now," and he's screaming at me that I'm late. I'm like, oh. I said, "Oh, let me check my email again." I'm like, "Oh yeah." So it's today. He goes, "Well, good thing I came by." Well, he was by himself. So then the sheriff's giving him a hard time because he didn't have a crew with them. And in any event, it turns out the property is vacant, so they weren't there anyway. So luckily, the sheriff didn't have to escort them out, and the sheriff just said, "Well, you can do whatever you want with the property. Just secure the locks." So the sheriff made sure that the locks were changed and secured. So then, the guy calls me maybe half an hour afterwards, and actually, I might as well go to the next slide now. So this is what it looks like.
Nice.
Probably not the worst I've seen. Probably one of the worst I've had, but they weren't hoarders, but their life belongings were in there. So if you can see the top left corner and kind of going from left to right and down the basement. So this was the biggest concern, was this nice little crack in the foundation wall.
That's going to be what, a half-inch crack in that wall?
Yeah. And I have other pictures, but there had actually been some shoring done in the basement over the years. So, the basement wall is definitely crumbling.
Is that potato salad in the next one?
Uh,
That's my code word for mold.
oh, okay. Yeah. So then, in the basement, there's some mold. So I'll get to the very last one in the bottom right here in the corner in a minute. So he calls me about half hour after he called me the initial time, and when the sheriff was yelling at him, and all I hear is this like gagging noise. I'm like, I can't remember this guy's name, but I'm like, hello. He goes, dude, I've been doing this for years and years and years, and back during the recession, I must have did like, I don't know, like 5 a week or something. He was telling me, this is definitely the worst smelling house I've ever been in my life. And he was like gagging as he's telling me this.
Mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden he said, I gotta get out of here. And he ran out the door, and all I could hear was him basically tossing his cookies.
Oh. So,
And I'm like, oh man, that's not good. He said, yeah, this place is full of urine and feces, and there's it looked like human diapers.
oh my God.
Yeah,
Oh.
so the elderly lady was apparently not able to make it to the bathroom, I guess, and the son was not taking very good care of her. So, any event, he says, "Well, I'll send you all the pictures," and he says, "Yeah, if you want me to clean it out," he goes, "I'll bring my crew back in the next couple of days, and we'll get this cleaned out for you." He goes, "But we're going to have to wear gas masks to come in here." I'm like, "Yeah, I can imagine." So he sends me the pictures, and as I'm going through them, in the bottom right corner, I see this sign. I'm like, and it's ripped, as you can see. I'm like, what the heck? As I'm like kind of squinting at it, I'm like, oh my gosh, is that a sign, like a condemning sign, like a dangerous building sign?
Mm-hmm.
And so sure enough, I call him back up like right after. I'm like, hey, what's going on with that sign? He goes, oh yeah, I forgot to mention that as I was running out of there. I said, well, what is that? Is this like been condemned by the city? He says, yeah, it looks like it. He said, you might want to give him a call and see what's happening. I'm like, okay, great. So yeah, he's gonna come back, and he kind of verbally told me it's gonna cost like $1,500 to $2,000 to clean out. It looks like a lot of junk, but it's only like an 850 square foot house, so and it wasn't really that much in the basement. So
I just paid 1,500 for that one I posted on Facebook. That was about 750 square feet, but it had a yard and a garage that was completely filled as well. So.
Oh, okay. So yeah, so it wasn't too far off.
Yep.
Well, I called the city, so I found the phone number. So the city of Grandview, called up the inspector. You can kind of see his name on there. I won't mention it, but I'd love to drag his name through mud. Left a message and never heard back. I found the website. It had all the inspector's name on it. Shot him an email.
Mm-hmm.
This is about a week went by. So this property manager asked me, hey, when do you want me to clean the property out? I said, well, let me just figure out what's going on with this property. If it's if it's condemned, you might get fined for going back in there. And he says, yeah, you're probably right. He said, he goes, if I were you, I would, I would just let us clean this out and then deal with it. And I should have kind of taken his advice, I guess. But I said, well, yeah, no problem. So finally, within I think it was literally 2 weeks later, I got an email back from the inspector. Yes, indeed, the property's been condemned. We had a welfare call made, or apparently there was a welfare call made by the caretaker of this elderly lady. So they go to the house, see the condition it's in. They in turn called the police. The police actually arrested the son. So I'm finding out. And then the police called the city, and because of the dismal condition of the property, and the city came and condemned it. So in this big long email from the city, he proceeds to tell me that in order to lift the dangerous building placement on the property, I needed to get city certified and county certified contractors to go in and clean this property out.
Oh boy.
So call up the property manager and are you licensed with the city? He said, well, I do have all my license except for the one they're looking for. I'm like, oh, great, of course. He says, if that's what they told you, good luck. He goes, you're going to get raked over the coals by the few guys that are with the city. Well,
Mm-hmm.
long story short, I ended up getting an REO agent on this,
Mm-hmm.
thanks to Dickie Baldwin, and she was fantastic to work with. Like the amount of crap we had to deal with to get this thing up and running, cleaned out, what have you. So she had a few contractors that were totally certified with the city and everything.
Mm-hmm.
So she sends them down or over to the house, and I said, well, hold on a minute. You've got to go to the city first and get a permit to enter. And
Mm-hmm.
you've got to all sign in, you give your ID, and you pay like a $50 occupancy permit or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So they go down to the city, get this. Well, I thought they're going in to clean it out. Well, no, they just went to assess it. Um,
How big's this city?
oh man, it's got to be like a 5-man wrecking crew with a lack of response.
Mm-hmm.
So, so when they go and investigate it initially, they came back with a $5,500 clean out fee.
Mm-hmm.
So I wasn't obviously too happy to get that from them and try to get them down, but they gave me the reasoning, and the reasoning was they had to wear hazmat suits. So they went down to the city. They had this whole list of procedures they had to follow: hazmat suits. They had to
Mm-hmm.
obviously wear a special type of breather, the whole works.
Did you
So they,
consider just sending somebody in on a Sunday with a dumpster when the city officials aren't working and just get the thing cleaned out and say
I,
what happened?
I was contemplating that, but this thing was being patrolled apparently
Mm-hmm.
by the city and the police, and given it had the that red sign all over it, I guess if because I did talk to the property manager and he didn't want to risk it afterwards. He says, "Yeah, I'm not stepping foot in that place. I could get I could get thrown to jail basically." So,
Yeah.
any event, yeah, they weren't budging on price, so they go back down to clean it out, and I think this is probably February by this time, March, I think it was, of this year.
Okay.
And they clean it out, and they do a pretty fantastic job. Well, they better add for the price. So they send me a bunch of pictures, and I'm like, okay, great. I'm like, can you go back down to the city now and get this lifted? Like that was part of the scope I gave you, is getting this thing uncondemned.
Yep.
So like a week or two goes by. All of a sudden I get an email again from the inspector, and in capital letters it was like screaming at me that I had let these people into the property without them getting another permit, and he was fining all of us and taking us to court. And anyways, I could go on and on and on and on about all of the stuff that they were threatening.
Mm-hmm.
So it was sitting there empty, all cleaned out, and it took another 4 months to get this thing uncondemned. The guys, the contracting crew had to go back down there like numerous times and like get fingerprinted, and it was like unbelievable, like the stuff that this inspector
What
was
was
making
their
up there.
beef with after it was cleaned out, like getting another permit? What'd they want a permit for?
Oh, they wanted an occupancy permit or like a permit to enter, and these guys didn't get the second one to go back in. They wanted one so apparently they're supposed to get one every single day they went into the property.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and obviously they didn't inform us of that. But any event, so then it finally get it lifted. Then I go to sell it. So since this thing already, I guess it had a stigma attached to it. All the local investors probably knew what was going on. We listed at 45 grand. I was getting offers at 30, low 30s, and that's the highest offer I was getting. Everything else in the area is selling 45 and up, and I was like scratching my head like, what is going on with this thing? I mean, it was in pretty bad shape, notwithstanding that big crack in the foundation, but according to the realtor, that's pretty standard in that area, and people just shore them up and they pass inspection. It's not a big deal. So I thought, okay, well, I'm going to look into rehabbing this. Sent a couple contractors by, and I just did not get a good feel whatsoever. as you know, rehabbing from a distance is never fun unless you get a trusted team on the ground.
Yep.
So then I had the grand idea that I'm going to partner up with a local rehabber, not necessarily contractor, but a guy who does rehabs. So I put this on Facebook, and I had numerous people reach out to me and said, "Yeah, this looks like a good deal." So I chatted with quite a few on the phone, kind of narrowed down to this one guy, and he went through it, and he came up the rehab budget was kind of closer, which more in line with what I was thinking it was going to be.
Mm-hmm.
And he goes, "Yeah, I'm just finishing one right down the street. I could probably start in the next couple weeks." He had a commercial. He had a business where he went into multi-unit apartments and did turnovers.
Yep.
And he showed me some of the stuff he did. And I'm like, okay, this guy knows what he's doing. And showed me some of his rehabs. Well, like 2 months goes by and nothing's happened. I'm like, what is happening? Talk to him like every couple of weeks, and the last draw was I called him up and said, "Hey, what is happening? When are you starting?" He said, "Well, a friend of mine that owns a restaurant got really ill, so I've been helping him out with that." And I'm like, okay, I'm done with this.
Yeah.
So I just said to the real estate agent, which we already had it listed, I had it taken off. I said, let's just sell it, whatever we can get for it. So anyway, on the next slide, sold 32 grand. So here's the purchase price, as what I paid for the note, couple monthly payments, expenses of $8,300, including the clean out, some legal fees, obviously for the forfeiture, boarding, or servicing, what have you. So all in for 34 grand. I forgot to mention the city was so kind that all of those notices they were sending me during the drywall for closing on it, they managed to tack on a couple $1,000s worth of liens, which they would not remove, even though I pleaded with them while it was in foreclosure, and they knew the exact story that was going on. Oh, by the way, the son in this property was also a sexual predator, or whatever we call it,
sex offender.
Yeah. Yep. So found that after the fact as well. And the reason he got arrested when the police went in was he had, what kind of porn on his computer.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, this is why I'm using
If you
this
take
as a
the
horse
absolute value of your ROI based on what you projected, you were very close.
Yeah, in the opposite direction. So yeah, I took an $8,000 loss, but I looked at it the grand scheme of things. Okay, this is probably, this is the first loss I've taken on notes. I've taken much bigger losses on real estate before, on some, obviously bigger deals. But, you look at the loss, rounded off to 25%. What if I put that 26 grand into the stock market and, in some kind of stock like WorldCom, and the thing goes to zero 3 months later? Hey, at least I only took a 23% loss, right? So that's the kind of the way I looked at it. That was because I was really beating myself up over this. At least I got majority of my capital back, right? So
thanks for bringing up WorldCom, by the way.
Yeah, I brought that up because I know that you took a bath on that. So,
but so a few things I just want to mention for a little learning experience for people on here, besides, the loss perspective. I just, the process. And again, because there's so many people out there doing training right now, and all they teach you is how to bid on an asset. Nobody teaches you kind of how to manage it and stuff. The lockout process, and I'm actually going through one for the first time right now, where I've got the forfeiture, and my attorney is basically like, yeah, we file something with the sheriff office, and what they'll do is, it's my understanding, they'll go to the property in this location tomorrow or on a Friday, hand a notice to somebody and say, hey, next Thursday we're coming. And they basically take the person out. In this location, you can hire somebody through the sheriff, a moving company that will do it to basically, take care of it for you. But that's pretty much the process, correct?
Yeah. Unfortunately, I've had to do 3 or 4 now. Well, back when I was buying foreclosures, I had to do numerous, and they were never fun. It was mean, you hate having to kick somebody out of their home, but I was never there in person, so I never had to to witness it. But yeah, it is a sinking feeling knowing that you're throwing someone out of their house. But it's just part of the business, and you just try not to dwell on it too much, right? So yeah, it's pretty sad that you have to go through the process, but the way I look at it too is if I've had rentals, lots of rentals where I've had to kick people out too. It's the same process when you got a rental property, right? So exact same. So it's just the way I look at it is just these people unfortunately get themselves into a financial situation that they can't get out of for whatever reason, and that's unfortunately life, right? So yeah, so the parting note on this one is on top of everything, when that sign was placed on the property, the red sign condemning it, I just haven't had time yet, but not long afterwards, I went through their bylaws, the city's bylaws, and it clearly states that all stakeholders in the property need to be notified that it's condemned or dangerous building put on it.
Yeah.
I never received one notification. I got lots of notes that they're going to put a fine on it for all these violations, but I never received one notice about it being violated. About it being condemned. So one of these days, I am going to seek out an attorney who might work on contingency and go after the city of Grandview, because I have nothing good to say about whatsoever, obviously.
I get the sense you're not going to be buying anything in that location anymore either.
No, I definitely will not be. That's the first and last in that particular part of Kansas City. So, in any event, so.
Okay. If people who are on listening, if they have questions or anything, feel free to put them in the chat or Q&A. Like people are popping. Well, John asked, how did you come up with the purchase price of the note from basically buying out your partner?
So I was more or less looking at, well, I know what we needed to get out of it, kind of to get out of the partnership. Obviously it was a pretty good profit there. It was basically based on it being a performing note. If you look at the numbers there, like especially the yield, you really couldn't go wrong, right? So, truth be told, we probably could have sold this for $30,000 or more out in the market. So, but obviously I get a bit of a discount for it being in our partnership. So, so. But also when I'm looking at it is, I also profited from this at the beginning. So I guess I also looked at it too. I'm like, oh yeah, that offsets my that loss I eventually took. So, but this is like Bill's horror story. Someone could have paid over $30,000 for this note and taken an even bigger loss, right? So, So, anyway, if you have any more questions, doesn't look like it. I want me to go on to my second horror story. Okay, I put this all on one side because I was doing this really, really quickly, but
no worries.
Yeah, and I jumbled all these notes down really quick so I wouldn't forget anything. So it's kind of going off the top of my head. So this is the note, one of the first notes I bought back in November of 2017. Picked it up for $20,500. The UPB was around 56, and I think the payoff is like over 78,000 or something like that, with unpaid interest or a bunch of unpaid interest and a bunch of stuff that usually doesn't count. But I wasn't looking at that, obviously. So I based it off the fair market value, 45,000. I seem to buy a lot of properties that are worth 45,000 or so. I believe they are.
When you look at this right off the bat, okay, you're paying 45 cents on the dollar roughly.
Yep.
So I mean, that's not a bad deal right off the bat. Looking at it, so go ahead.
Yeah. So the interesting part about this one was it was in foreclosure and about 1 month away. This is a very, very complicated note, and I still don't even understand how this is done. Like I've read through all the documents like a couple times, and I'm like, okay, I this is totally up to you. This is why we hire attorneys. So this was a HOA foreclosure. However, it started out as the bank. The bank was foreclosing on this first. Well, part way, like, and this foreclosure had started in 2012, and then it changed hands a couple times, and then the fund I bought it from, I don't know if they weren't interested in it, it just wasn't worth it for them, but they weren't proceeding with the foreclosure by the looks of it. So the HOA
Was this
had
a Kirkland asset?
no,
Okay.
no. I'm trying to think of, this may have been Window Rock. I'm trying to think if that's who it was. Yeah. Window Rock or, oh, it doesn't matter now. So I think it was Bank of America that started the foreclosure process, and then by the time I bought it from this fund, they had, I think they just stalled on it. Well, the HOA, this borrower hadn't been paying HOA dues for like years by the looks of it, and they had a couple of liens placed on the property because of unpaid HOA dues, and they added up to something crazy like $20,000. But as I'm looking at the complaints, a lot of it was legal fees, a bunch of junk fees, but so it was well over 20,000. So I thought, okay, there's two ways this can play out. Either, and so I know HOA foreclosures from dealing with them in Florida. They're huge down there. And Chris,
don't get me
right
started right now. Don't that one, because right now I'm at the finish line. But if the curveball that I heard got thrown at me about an hour ago gets thrown at me, oh man, this one's gonna take a while. Aaron Quinn is gonna be on speed dial. So.
Oh, wait a minute. I'm next in line. She's dealing with something for me right now, so she's got to. You have to wait in line. So one event, what normally happens in Florida is an HOA will often foreclose before a first lien does. And what people do in Florida is they'll buy the HOA lien knowing, well, sometimes they don't know. Some people are just like, hey, I got a screaming good deal on a condo for 10 grand and it's worth 200,000. But what most people normally do is they'll buy the foreclosure, HOA foreclosure, knowing full well that there's a second lien or a first lien in place, but they'll rent it out because they own it and they can do whatever they want. So they'll rent it out for as long as they possibly can in the hopes that they're going to recoup their 10,000 whatever they paid at the HOA foreclosure, and then some. Because usually by the time in Florida, especially a few years ago, 3-4 years ago, there was such a backlog. If a foreclosure hadn't started by the first, and that's what people would do, is they look to see if a lien pendant had been filed. If it hadn't started yet, they thought, okay, we have at least a year of renting this property out before this thing might even come close to foreclosure. So I thought, okay, so there's one of two ways this is going to play out. Someone's going to buy this at the HOA foreclosure, and I will make an agreement with them, get a deed in lieu. Say, listen, I won't foreclose on you. I'll pay you like whatever it's going to cost to foreclose on this $5 grand, $5 to $6 grand in Cleveland or in Ohio, Cuyahoga County, and hopefully they paid less than that. So, and then the second option which was the most likely, is the HOA is probably going to take it back at the foreclosure. So in Ohio, for all the listeners out there, the minimum starting bid at a foreclosure sale is 2/3 of the appraised value. So part of the foreclosure process is you've got to get an appraiser, and I've seen some of the appraisals done on these, and it's like chicken scratched on the back of a napkin. I don't know why the courts allow them, but they do. But on this one, it actually came up to 45,000. That's not how I came up with the value, but it just coincidentally came up 45,000. So the minimum bid obviously was going to be 30,000.
Yep.
So I thought, well, it's probably going to become an HOA owned condo. But then at the very last minute, I discovered that there's new language put in the sheriff's sale that if it didn't sell, it would go back at the first foreclosure, it would go back to sale again at the second in 2 weeks with no minimum bid. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. Like that actually might work out better, because if someone does buy this as a third-party bidder, if it doesn't sell at the first auction, then I'll definitely approach the third-party bidder and do it in lieu. So day before, borrower files BK, and
so they filed bankruptcy.
Yeah. So of course, and if memory serves, it was a BK 13, and this guy had no right. He'd already filed like 2 or 3 BK 7s, I think, in the past, but I think he was.
That doesn't matter. Trust me, I know.
No, I know. So he filed with BK 13. Well, he has no intention of staying in the property. I kind of figured it out after the fact that that's another delay tactic. They'll do a 13 and then they'll convert it into a 7, which delays the bloody foreclosure or bankruptcy even longer. So yeah, so he gets it converted into a 7. So like 6 months go by.
Mm-hmm.
So now we're into April, May, I think of last year, I guess 2018. So we're set to go to foreclosure sale. Like, okay, great. So some I shouldn't use this language on this podcast, but some idiot bids not only the minimum appraised amount, but he bids something stupid like 36,000. And I see this the next day. I think the attorney sends it back to me, and I'm like, "You have got to be kidding me! Like, who in their right mind? Like, it was clear language in the share sale that was subject to the first. Like, how could that person not see it?"
Yeah.
Any event, it was an elderly gentleman. I actually I saw I saw the handwritten note that he had written into the courts, because obviously it becomes a piece of legal evidence.
Yeah.
That he had no idea that he was buying this with another mortgage on it, and he was trying to get a mortgage himself, and the bank wouldn't finance it. And I'm like, well, no, shoot, Sherlock.
Usually you have to give a deposit. He probably lost his deposit, I'm guessing.
Yeah, he it was either I think it was either 10% or $5,000 minimum in the Cuyahoga. I can't remember exactly what it was. I'm pretty sure it was
So
$5,000.
did that come to you?
No, I would have thought it would, but
Went to the HOA.
it went to the HOA. Well, it paid off of all the court costs first, a couple grand worth, and then there was and there's some outstanding taxes on this, so I thought it would pay the taxes. Nope, it went to everybody else except for me and the tax appraiser. So that delayed things another 6 months because they had to do an appeal process, or he had to do an appeal process. It ended up he lost the appeal as well. So this gets dragged out till I think it was October of last year now. So we're back to square one. We're ready to go to sale again, or so I thought. Well, the HOA said we're not spending another dime. We do not want that, because they had to, they were sick of just racking up fees with their attorney and court costs and everything. They said, you take this over. We're like, okay, no problem. Well, since this was originally a bank-driven foreclosure, and their name is still on it, Bank of New York or whoever it is, or Bank of America, the HOA came in as a cross-claimant and became the lead in the foreclosure. Well, when we went back to, this is my first dealing with a magistrate in the Cuyahoga County, but everybody screams bloody murder when they have to do a foreclosure there because of the magistrate. So it's not only the courts; it has to go through a magistrate, which he's basically a judge that oversees all the foreclosures, and that's basically all he does. So you can imagine the backlog. I don't know if there's more than one, or there probably is, but there's only a few. So they're called a magistrate. Well, this takes another couple months after this for us to become the lead foreclosure again, or become a cross claimant, I guess. Like I said, I'm still not 100% sure how all this works.
That's interesting, because when in the ones that I've done where there's been an association, they're actually part of the defendant, because you're the first, so you're suing anybody that has a position behind you. So that's interesting.
They were, and that's why I was like, wow, that's interesting. They became a cross claimant, and they were a defendant and a cross claimant. So like I said, I don't understand how this all worked, but so in any event, we just, okay, well, let's continue on to foreclosure. Well, the magistrate wouldn't allow it. He said, no, you've got to start from scratch. Like, you've got to be kidding me. So this was in, like I said, October or November of last year. And no, sorry, we went to go restart it again in October of last year. And well, it took until April of this year to find out that we have to start foreclosure over again. Sorry, that's what happened. Sorry. So we find out like in the spring of this year, we had to start foreclosure all over again.
Mhm.
But the attorney said, well, we should be able to push this through because the borrowers, so he'd actually already moved out. I had a preservation company go in there, and the
Yeah, it doesn't look
basis.
bad.
Well, this is probably the better, one of the better shots. It's actually in pretty decent condition, just really, really filthy dirty, no dated. But
Mhm.
well, I'll get to here in the bottom. Like these things have been selling like hotcakes lately, and the
Mhm.
value, like I saw a couple as is sales that look probably about the same condition as this. They're at 55 now. I'm like, wow, okay, well at least one good thing's coming out of this.
Mhm.
So to back up a step, so I found out it was spring, we had to re-foreclose. Well, so we had to redo the complaint.
Mhm.
The attorney files it, and this is a couple months ago, and they sent me here's the complaint, FYI. And I think I made a post about this on Facebook not too long ago. So I'm like, okay, I'm just going to read through this just to make sure everything's okay in it. Well, luckily I did. I'm reading through it, and they've got the wrong borrower's name.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, all through it, and they kept referring this as a second lien.
Even better.
And and they, what's one other thing I can't remember what it was. So as you can imagine, I wasn't too happy, and
Well, that you
thought
bring
that
up an
my
interesting point because a lot of the attorneys I use, they send this stuff through without having you look at it. And
yeah, yeah,
most attorneys, like, I'll be like, hey, did you send a demand letter? Yeah, well, can I get a copy? And it's like, and I'll see something like, oh, and they're like, oh, it went out, we'll have to send a new one. Or, even like the complaints.
yeah.
I had one where the attorney put my home address on it and not my
Ooh.
business address. And I'll tell you, I don't think I ever got madder at an attorney than when that occurred,
I can
because
imagine.
I was like livid. Um,
Yeah, yeah. You should have seen the Nastagram I sent back when I saw that. I was like, you better not be billing me to redo this complaint. If you do, it's going to be absolute
yeah.
heck to pay.
Mhm.
And for most of the listeners, there's a very famous firm that a lot of people use,
Mhm.
Sotil and Burley. It's not them, so
Yeah. So,
it was it was a I think I assumed them from the previous, and I just thought it's usually just easier keeping an attorney on if it's already in foreclosure. But I kind of learned my lesson.
so, so where are you with this one now? Is it still active?
Oh yeah, it's still active. It's so the complaint just got refiled again like last week or
Okay.
like a couple weeks ago. So
Mhm.
and I asked for an update. I'm like, okay, what is the timeline now? Like how fast do you think we can push this through? Crickets.
Well,
It's like
yeah, I've got one right now in Cuyahoga, and we filed the complaint, and I think they have 30 days to respond, but it's 30 days from when they're served, and then kind of it's been 30 days now, and I checked on the website, and I still haven't seen anything. But one of the things too that's really quirky with Cuyahoga County, or I don't know if it's Ohio in general, is like you go to foreclose, they run a title report, and then they have to run like a second title report. Like,
yeah, right before the day before.
yep. So
Yeah,
it's
and
real
then charge you
quirky.
for it.
Oh
250
yeah.
bucks
Oh.
for it. Yeah. Yeah, yeah, I don't understand that either. But oh, and that's another thing. They tried to serve this guy
Mm-hmm.
the original crappy
Mm-hmm.
complaint they put in with all the mistakes in it, and it they couldn't find them. They
Mm-hmm.
kept coming back unreturned, so that delayed things another week or a month or two. Oh man, so so that's where I'm sitting at this. So I'm in expense wise, roughly $5,000. So I'm into it for about 25 so far, and but luckily I said the value of these things have gone up significantly in the last couple of years. So um,
So, I mean,
I'm
financially, this is still not a bad deal.
no, but I just wanted to
Mhm.
yeah, present stuff that can happen. Like
Oh
who
no,
never thought something like this would ever happen, right? But it's like 1 in 100, one in 1,000, like something like this would
no, it's
happen like this. So
when you're dealing with condos and condo associations and HOAs, it is complete chaos in Bedlam. And,
yeah,
you know, I've got a story that I wish I could share, but I can't share at this point in time. That is going to just blow your minds. and it's like I just want to rip my hair out. And I got a text tonight because we're supposed to close on it tomorrow, and it's delayed again. And it's just, I mean, it's blowing my mind.
You're supposed to like sale, like the sale was supposed to happen tomorrow.
Yeah, it's supposed to close tomorrow.
Wow.
Cash sale.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's so absolutely
Yeah.
so but no, I mean, so this one you purchased it in November 2017. So this one's been about almost 2 years now, with it being a note. So,
Yeah.
and yeah, it's one of those things with, why I love Ohio. I'm curious, did they, has anyone asked anything about, a license in Ohio or anything like that? Or I know you've done some research on that, and I think I have your own opinion on it, but I was just curious if have run into that in regards to foreclosing in the state.
Not yet. I haven't.
Okay.
The attorney on this did inquire, and since this one was purchased before that came out,
Yeah.
they said I don't think we shouldn't have any concern in this case. So, or the foreclosure started well before that new ruling came out, which
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I was on the phone actually today, kind of while we're just quick talking a little bit about licensing and jump a little bit, but I'm on the phone with Illinois today about getting licensed in Illinois. And they've changed a rule now that in order to get licensed, you have to have your company get a financial audit done.
Oh,
And if anyone doesn't, there's different levels of audits. There's, I see people raising your hand. Please put something in the chat or in the Q&A. There's different levels. There's unaudited, which is basically here are my books. There is compiled, which means it's compiled by an auditor, but nothing, or CPA, but nothing is reviewed. There's
yeah.
reviewed, which is basically spot checked. Then there's audit, which is like 120 point checklist that
Yeah.
typically it's basically what public companies get done.
Right.
And
It's like 10 grand probably at least.
yeah. So it's like, oh my God. The other thing I've learned as well is if you do a 506B as in boy fund, as part of the exemptions as part of the SEC to have the fund, you also have to have an audit done. So just
Really?
food for thought for people out there who's looking to do a fund in a 506C, which you can advertise, you don't have to get it done. But in 506B is part because you have, in 506B, if you have non-accredited investors,
Yeah.
then you have to do an audit.
Really? So like
Yep.
every year, you mean, or?
Every year within the first 120 days of opening the fund, and then at every year end.
Wow. That never.
Thankfully, the one I just closed, the 120, will coincide with the year end.
So you did a B. Okay, so you're.
Yeah, I did a
Oh,
B. So yeah,
wow.
but
Yeah, that's why a lot of funds when the returns aren't as great, people are like, well, where'd all the where all our returns go? It's usually stuff
well,
like that. So
the thing people forget about a fund is, you take a note deal. And, typically the person may fund a deal and then you've got, basically the expenses within the note. But then, you've got accounting and bookkeeping. You've got other expenses that typically run as part of your general overhead, which most people don't account for in a note deal. Those, if they're affiliated with the fund, they get charged to the fund. And, those can eat up costs pretty quickly,
yeah,
especially
yeah,
some reporting that you have to do. Some of the reporting, I think there's a company called like Evergreen or something that,
yeah.
they charge, I think, $1,500 a month to do, or Redwood. It's Redwood, I think. It's $1,500 a month for them to basically essentially do the books for distributions. And, it's a minimum 1,500. And I know an investor in the Northwest who uses them, and I'm like, you're nuts,
Yeah.
but so yeah, they're expensive. But
Yeah, you just have to work that much harder to pay for all that overhead, right? Or
yep,
find those deals, better
yep,
deals to pay for that overhead. Yeah.
exactly. So, but back to these deals, people, do you have questions, comments that you want to throw out there regarding these two deals, or any other deals, or anything in question while we have Chad on the line. You know, so Chad, this one, the first one you showed was the one in the last episode, like you mentioned, the one you have been talking about with the Missouri asset and so forth that you were going
Yeah.
through. Who'd you end up using out of curiosity for an attorney in Missouri? Would you mind sharing, or is it something that wasn't that great of experience?
No, I've used them actually for quite a few. They're in multiple states. They're called Werbicki Law. They're out of Chicago.
Okay.
They cover
Mm-hmm.
Missouri as well. So yeah, they're fast. They're kind of like a
Mm-hmm.
they're kind of like a puppy mill,
Mm-hmm. Okay.
where you don't get any correspondence.
Mm-hmm.
But man, they get stuff done. Like they did that one in earlier this year for me in St. Louis, and yeah, they had it done in like 4 or 5 months, whatever it was. I was just blown away how quick it was, and it was obviously uncontested, but
How much did they
and it's
charge out of
obviously
curiosity?
non-judicial.
Do you know?
The going rate, the Fannie Mae guidelines.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah,
As I
whatever
said.
that is. Yeah, and then $1,000 of court costs probably. Oh, and the advertising, of course.
Yep.
That was like
Yeah.
$700 or $900. Like holy cow.
Yeah, I'm using Catherine Davis. I don't know. I think she's a smaller outfit, only does Missouri, but I've done one with her previously, and I'm using her right now for one in St. Louis as well.
Okay. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they're good, but as far as communication, it's a little bit too be desired, I guess you could say. If I have a question, shoot them an email. I mean, maybe it's just send it to the wrong person, but I
Mm-hmm.
just don't get a response. I'm like, I know the owner now, Russ Rubicki, so
Okay. I've heard the
so
name before. I think I may have actually reached out to him, but never just had to use him. So.
yeah, but whenever I reach out to him, it's
Mm-hmm.
like, or I copy him, then I get a response usually. So
Yeah. So,
um,
one question came up when we were talking about HOAs, and I mentioned Florida. Someone asked about Erin Quinn if she only does Florida. I think she does Georgia and Florida, correct?
yeah, I think she does Georgia as well. Yeah.
Yeah, she's in the Notes and Bolts Facebook group. So, if you're in the group, feel free to reach out to her and basically get information on her services. So.
But you can't use her right now because I'm next in line, like I said.
Actually, I gotta say, I've spoken to her several times. I haven't used her yet.
Oh, okay.
And because I've been using Beth Cruikshank in a lot of my things, and I've had great luck with Beth. But I think they both have two different styles, and for what I think I'm going to need moving forward, having spoken with Beth, I think Erin fits kind of the more what I'm looking for, and Beth is admitted it and fine with it. So
Oh, that's good.
so.
Yeah.
Let's see. Joe mentioned, I understand when you have Cleveland, they require the inspection, what needs to be done, post bond, point of sale inspections. And have you run into this at all?
Yeah. So point of sale is the only.
Mm-hmm.
It's only in certain suburbs of Cleveland. I'm not sure if this one is in that. I should look into that. But yeah, I've got lots of experience at point of sale. I've done numerous properties around Cleveland.
I have a question for you, because I've got one that I bought a CFD, and I got a letter from them saying that I didn't register it and there was no point of sale inspection. And I sent them back basically the contract for deed, which was recorded, saying, yes, I purchased this, but it's been under a contract for deed. So the person's still been living in this property. And, oh, by the way, they won't allow me access to the property. I'm just curious on a CFD, if you bought it in the area where there's point of sales, did they still make you do one, even though there's still the borrower in there?
That's a good question. Most of my stuff, except for the last those CFDs, there was a couple in that pool that a lot of people bought from. You scooped 3,000 loans out of. There was 3 around there, and I don't think the deeds have been recorded yet because they need some more information. So, but yeah, the rest of mine have been notes around
Okay.
in any other areas. So yeah, I guess we'll find out in the next. Yeah, as soon as I get that deed recorded, it'll probably be another nice surprise.
Yeah.
But funny you mentioned that. This was a performing CFD, and or one, lots of them they're all performing CFDs, but one borrower, like last week, I think it was. Just informed the servicer, I'm giving the property back. I'm moving out this weekend. I'm like, okay, can you offer him to like work with him a little bit? And he just said, nope. He just said it wasn't worth what he was paying. I'm like, okay, well, fine. The equity in it is like crazy. So I'm like, okay. And I sent him a cancellation land contract, and he's got it like yesterday, I think. So I'm waiting to get it back because he's
Have you been in the property though?
Well, that's what I'm thinking. Like, what's wrong with this
When somebody
property?
runs like that, it's usually like, get me out of here. And
yeah, that's kind of what I'm thinking is happening. That there's a bomb's gone off in the middle of it or something, and the value that I put on it is probably gonna be half of that, and probably take a loss on it too. So yeah, I'm supposedly supposed to have an inspector out there, but they haven't got out there yet. So.
Okay. But one of the questions I want to ask is, this month we've been having some people show off their deals and stuff and so forth. And, we've all had bad deals and so forth, but, you've done, many, many deals in the past now. What percentage would you say kind of is, would you say sometimes is a bad deal? And looking back, is there something that you look back and say, oh, I probably shouldn't have bought that because of this or something?
Yeah, I'd say one in 5 maybe is a bad deal, somewhere around there. 1 in 5, yeah, probably around that ratio, I guess. Yeah, the biggest, I I would love to be able to get inside these bloody low value CFDs before we buy them, but that's never going to happen. Yeah, I've kind of learned to steer clear of areas where, I've always had this ever since the beginning. If you're buying in an area, especially in CFDs, that you think a property is worth, say, 30,000 or more, but there's property selling for 10,000 around it, your property's probably not going to be worth 30,000. It's going to be worth 10. Yeah. So I've learned that the hard way a couple of times. Like I've got a couple right now that I bought way back when that I'm just kicking myself for buying. The borrower's still in them. One of them's paying, trying to do a conversion on it, and another one, she's semi-performing and she hasn't paid in like 4 or 5 months now, and I don't even want to kick her out because I know how bad the property's going to be, and I just don't want to deal with it. So yeah.
The ones that I've had the worst luck are, and everyone says it, but I still thought I was still getting at a really good price and stuff, is when they were vacant.
Yeah, that too.
Yep. I mean, there's one even that I bought that was a 3-family, and looking back, I probably should have renovated it and leased out and rented it, but instead I just owner financed it to a guy. At the end of the day, I didn't lose money, but didn't make anything. And actually the guy refinanced out of, because I owner financed it to him. Otherwise I would have took a killing of a loss. But the guy basically paid probably an extra $7,000 to have me finance it. And that was like 18 months ago, and he's paying it off tomorrow, or he paid it off today. So,
nice.
So
well, that's all right.
Yeah, but that's the ones that I've seen. Like, I agree 100%. If the houses are in the area of 10 or 20,000, then that's what yours probably is. And the other component is, the vacant ones are the ones where I've gotten crushed. No, I would say crushed, but I've lost. I think the most I've lost on a deal may have probably where you're at, between 5 and 10 grand. So it's not.
Yeah, this pool that I'm closing on tomorrow, or hopefully closing on tomorrow. There's a lot of vacant properties and a lot of properties. These are all notes, not CFDs, but a lot of them were in, like East Cleveland. Not a lot of them, but a couple in East Cleveland. where there are 10, 15,000 properties, and there was BPOs done by the seller, and they thought they were doing me a favor, us a favor. Man, by the time I got through those BPOs, I wouldn't say not one of them, but maybe half of them are right. But the ones in the lower value areas, they thought, oh, this one's worth. Well, one of them, for instance, was worth. They had a BPO of $87,000 on it. Anytime I see anything Cleveland proper that has a a BPO over 30,000, I get very suspicious. So the first
Yeah.
thing I did was hop on Google Streets and like, okay, that thing is like ready to be bulldozed. And then I go on the county site and like, oh, it's been demolished. So I open up the BPO. I'm like, this guy must have got the wrong property or something. Well, no, he the comparables on vacant lots, but on the other side of the tracks, on the other side of the highway, about 5 miles away, right near the downtown core, like vacant lots, like commercial lots. He's using those as comparables. Like, are you serious? So like, okay, let's see if there's actually any sales in the area of like these vacant residential lots. And yeah, I found one nearby that sold for 3,000. Like, okay, 87,000 to $3,000, and that was one of like numerous clawbacks on the like I had to fade the bid like you wouldn't believe, but luckily the seller was very accommodating. After I explained to him, I actually made notes on almost every single asset and sent him the spreadsheet, said here's the reason why my bids are significantly less now. So
Well, I just had that where it was a BPO of like 80,000, and I had somebody go take a look at the property. Excuse me. And I sent back to the seller. I said, I think somebody had a typo in there, typing this up and just added another zero on it. And basically, sent it over, the existing pictures to them and stuff, because all they did is, the BPO, they didn't provide the full BPO. They just had the BPO value listed in the tape. And I said, yeah, there must be a typo in this one, because I showed him pictures of the house and stuff. And, I came back and said, I'm just going to pull this one. And he's like, yep, understood.
Yeah. I don't trust BPOs as far as I can throw them on the guy that does them.
I would tell everybody out there, whatever your BPO is, take 25% off.
Yeah, at least. And on the BPOs, they usually do the 30-day value, 90-day value, quick sale. Take the quick sale price, because that's even overinflated usually most of the time. So
yeah, that's why I usually
lowest value on there. So
now, are you still, out of curiosity, ordering BPOs, or are you kind of doing your own BPO?
I don't think I've ever bought a BPO yet.
Okay.
That's the answer your question.
Yeah, I've bought a lot recently. What I've been doing is, essentially getting the property preservation company to go by, take some photos. I've been pulling on data tree some of the local sales comps in the area. And then what I'll do is I'll find an agent in the area and just send it to them and say, hey, does this look for this price? Does this look like it fits in this price point? And,
Right.
it's essentially, it's a little more work than just, sending Dickie or somebody, hey, give me a BPO for this property. But, I'll be the BPOs and the pictures that I've been getting were just so god awful. And, they were way off that it wasn't even worth it.
Yeah. That's what I find too. The pictures on the BPOs are terrible. They're all blurry and they're embedded in the PDF. You can't extract them. You zoom in, they're all like, the what do you call it, ratio, the pin ratio on them is like, it's just terrible. So I do the same thing in the preservation company that I use. We use the same one, but I use another company that just does drive-bys, and they do them for realtors, and their pictures are spectacular. So
Yep. I've been using is it Safeguard or
Yep. Safeguard. I've given them a boatload of work in the last couple months. Like,
oh
all
god,
of a sudden I've got all these REOs and empty properties, like a dozen or more. It's like, wow, how do I handle all this? So they've been doing a pretty good job for the most part.
all the assets I've been buying, with the fund, I would send them the list and say, hey, I need, as part of due diligence, I'm like, I need eyes on all these properties, and send a list of 70 properties that they would go, and literally they'd send an email like every 2-3 days. Here's an update. And within pretty much a week, I had all the photos, and I was like, wow. So.
Is that remote locations too? I've never actually sent them out to remote.
Yeah, some of them in remote locations as well.
Okay.
So been working that with them, and then from the title, the other component is, as I mentioned to you, I've been working with a company now about pulling titles through them versus some other means, because of kind of the insurance component to it and stuff. And I have found I ordered some recently through Pro Title as well, and I found that they've been pretty quick recently, where in the past they used to take a long time.
Okay.
They've gotten much better, but
Oh, okay.
yeah.
Yeah, you have to shoot me the details on them again, you said, were you gonna send me their pricing? I thought you said you were going to.
Yeah, actually, he's putting to. So I've got. It's actually one of them's a title company, the other's an abstractor. So if it's anything east of the Mississippi, I just go directly to the abstractor, and
Okay.
and if it's on the other side, I go to title company because they got miscellaneous abstractors on the in the west of the Mississippi. So I'll send you that information and stuff as well.
Okay.
But it's something I've been looking at because, as I've mentioned to people, converting CFDs to notes. I had a nice conference call with them on Wednesday or Tuesday of this week about just the process and of what they're doing versus what I'm doing, and understanding what a UPL state is, where you need a licensed attorney to actually do the settlement if you're getting title insurance on a property. So it's
Oh, really?
North Carolina.
Yeah.
There's several states like that. I think Georgia, North Carolina. The settlement agent has to be a attorney. So it creates a little
The price goes
confusion
up.
there. So basically, what I'm doing with them is I'm basically sending them the purchase and sale agreement and sending them the note and deed of trust or mortgage, and they are doing everything from there. So, with the exception of the the MLO qualification, which is typically done by a MLO, but everything from handling the title ordering, the deed and recording and everything, they'll handle everything. They'll put a HUD statement together. They'll do everything.
Oh, okay, cool.
So
That's this title company you're talking about.
yeah, so I've got one in the works right now as kind of the trial. So I'll let you know how it goes.
Oh, okay, so you're actually doing a purchase sale agreement?
Yes, because on the CFD you're selling the property.
Oh, okay. Well, I always wondered that because in the language of CFD is, oh yeah, I guess it doesn't say converting it into a note mortgage.
Here's the difference: is a lot of times in the CFD it just says you're going to quit claim it to them.
Right.
Where I'm trying to get these as a full warranty deed if possible. Worst case, a special warranty deed, and anytime you put a warranty on it, typically, you're getting some type of assurance from somebody, and as part of that, they'll want to see. And that's been the hardest part, is the purchase and sale, because these damn states, for these purchases and sales, each one has some quirky language, and most people just use a realtor contract, but you can't, as you've been on the commercial side, like, we talked about this, like if you need a construction contract, you go to AIA, you spend $100 and you buy it. The National Association of Realtors don't share their contracts or forms. So
Right.
it's like, okay, how do I get a state compliant purchase and sale agreement? And like, I'm trying to find one, and it's like, challenging.
Oh, okay.
So that's why I've been asking all my realtor friends in each state. That's if I post in a notes and bolts group today, I'm like, anyone got anyone in Arizona? Because I've got a borrower approved, and I'm converting him in Arizona right now. So, but
so then you put the purchase price as the loan balance, I guess.
Yep. Yeah. Purchase prices and
Okay.
loan balance. And, I'm keeping all the terms the same. And I just look at it from the perspective of, instead of a CFD, I'm going to have a note with the borrower who had a long pay history, as well as it's a warranty deed. So it's clean paper. I mean, what's the difference between that and institutional paper in reality?
Yeah.
Because you got the borrower qualified, you got a warranty deed, what else,
Well, the one I did in Pennsylvania recently, we didn't do a purchase sale agreement. The attorney, I got an attorney to handle it, and he just had language in. There was like the mortgage and the note, obviously, but then there's a third piece of third instrument was like the conversion language, and we didn't do a purchase sale agreement, but he thought that was the way to do it. But
yeah, the one I'm doing in Pennsylvania, they said do a purchase and sale agreement.
oh, really?
Yeah,
that's interesting.
so
Okay.
yep, it's there's probably, like anything, 20 different ways you can skin the cat. And, it's probably, I don't see either one being wrong,
Yeah.
essentially.
Right. Yeah. Well, my attorney did it was more like a loan mod kind of language.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So,
So that's an interesting thing you bring that up, because if you talk to an MLO about qualifying people, when you're doing a conversion, you're technically doing a loan mod, believe it or
right.
not.
Yes.
So in many instances, you may not need to, in their minds, requalify them.
And that's exactly what my attorney told me.
Okay.
Yeah, he said we don't need to requalify. So
I'm curious, when was it originated? Was it before or after Dodd-Frank?
2011, maybe,
Okay,
I'm guessing.
so that's the one, that was the kicker. He said if it was originated before Dodd-Frank, basically you didn't need to requalify. I haven't asked them if it was after. I think if it's after, I think you only have to do the ability to repay, which if they have 12 consecutive months of pay history, that qualifies as ability to repay,
Oh, okay.
is my understanding, but I could be wrong.
Hmm. Yeah, in this particular instance, she had 12 pays, 12 months. Maybe that has something to do with it too, I guess. So, yeah.
Um, by the way, Sylvia asked, who do we use for our inspections? Safeguard Properties, and I forget where they're out of, but
Sort of Ohio, the Cleveland area.
yep, they're out of Cleveland area.
Stacy's actually in the Nuts and Bolts group, I think.
Yep, yeah, Stacy's in Notes and Bolts group, and actually she's going to be in DC the end of the month for there's a big property preservation conference the same weekend as I think Note Expo and Mark Kohler in Pennsylvania. There's a lot going on that weekend. So, okay. Anybody else have any questions? We've been going on for a good while here. So if not, Chad, why don't you let people know where they can reach you, how they can contact you?
Best thing is just on Facebook, I guess. I'm in pretty much all the groups, Nuts and Bolts and all the other note groups that are out there. That's probably the easiest. Or shoot me a text. I'll give you my US numbers. I'll give you one of my US numbers, 561-221-4255. Or you can go to my website, equigrowth.com. That's EQUI, and the word growth, all one word.com. My contact info's on there.
Okay.
I don't do Instagram, Twitter. I don't do any of those other sites, so you're not going to find me there. But this day and age, it's pretty easy to get a hold of anybody. And LinkedIn, yeah, I'm on LinkedIn also.
And we'll have all your contact information in the show notes as well. So if people need to go in, just go to gooddeedsknowininvesting.com, and under the podcast section, we'll have the show notes, which will have all Chad's contact information as well. So, well, Chad, thanks for coming on and sharing your stories. And thank you all for joining us tonight on this episode of Open Mic Night and the Good Deeds Known Investing podcast. As a reminder, feel free to leave us a review on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, or any of the other podcast listening sites. So thank you all and have a good evening.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you.